Thanks, mate. Perfect. Excellent. Brilliant. Well, it is good here, isn't it? No, I like it. I mean, I get the chance to go to loads of churches, and often I get up, I'm like, wow, it's good here. And I'm lying, yeah? I am lying. It's not that good. I have got up after banjo worship. Yeah, I've got up after all kinds of stuff. But actually, I love what's going on here. And this is a good church, isn't it? It's brilliant. And what is happening and exciting. And that young guy that was speaking, where is he? Wow, is it Toby? Is that right? What? That was amazing, wasn't it? So, shall we just go home then? Because that was the meat, apparently, yeah? What we're going to get now is crumbs. Right, great. Well, thanks for that. And now that was amazing, though. Really good. So, my daughter is 19. Kezia's 19. And she decided that she wanted to go on mission. So she wanted to go to Canada for 6 months. The guy that's running the mission out there is a guy called Phil Collins, not the drummer. And so she went out there, but it was our family. It was pretty traumatic for our family because we all get on great. We love each other. So Tamsin's really close to Kezia. My daughter's called Kezia, and the 2 weeks running up to us driving Kezia to Heathrow, Tamsin is just like crying all the time. So my wife's just crying all the time. She's going to miss her daughter. But we're like, so I had to step in. I had to be the dad of the house. And I had to speak firmly to my wife, right? She let me do that. And I spoke firmly to her, and I says, Tamsin, come on, we've got to make this really positive for Kezia. We've got to be like, wow, we're so excited that you're doing this. We can't be crying in the airport. So when we drop her off at Heathrow, no crying, 100% no crying. So Tamsin was like, yeah, you're right, let's do that. So the four of us drive down. My son, he's 21, he comes down, and we're in having coffee, sort of kind of waiting for her to go to the gate. It's the weirdest coffee, because like no one, like 6 months she's going to be away, and we're trying to chat as if it's normal. It's not normal, and we're just kind of, and then I made a big mistake. Never do this. I got God involved, yeah? And if you want to write something down, never get God involved, yeah? You're right, crumbs. And it's like, I was like, oh man, I gathered my family round and we all stood up and we prayed in Heathrow Airport. And wow, well, within seconds, Kezia is just bawling her eyes out, right? She's sobbing. And then my wife, now I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, ugly crying. Have you ever heard that, yeah? Well, there's something worse than ugly crying, and that is ugly trying not to cry, yeah? That is worse. I mean, I was like, love, please cry, give us all a break. And it was like, it was bad. It was bad. So she starts crying, Kezia's crying, Tamsin's crying, and then I'm praying, and then I find myself, these big blobs hitting the ground, and then I turn to my son, nothing, yeah? He's just like staring forward, little bubble in his head thinking, when can I get Nando's, yeah? And it's like, and I said to him after, I'm like, Jordan, come on, your sister's going away for 6 months. He's like, Dad, I'm getting her room. And that just tells you everything, doesn't it? But we said goodbye, she went, and it's like, oh, a bit emotional, and then we drove back up to Nottingham. But what we didn't know is that the flight had been massively delayed. And so we got back to Nottingham. I said to Tam, I'm going to get my hair cut. I go to a barber's, like a proper men's hairdresser, and we're sitting there. It's really busy, Saturday afternoon, and I'm kind of not thinking. My phone pings. I don't even think about it. I pick up my phone. I'm basically Kezia, my daughter. She says, Dad, that's me just about to fly now. Here are 3 things I've always wanted to tell you. And in that barber's, I started bawling, yeah? I started properly like, like, you know that, like when you're making the noises and everything, all of that stuff, yeah? And everybody in this barber's, all these men are just like looking at each other because none of them have got the emotional equipment to deal with a crying man in the barber's. They're all, you talk to him. No, I'm not, you talk to him. I'm not talking to him. And it was like, wow. And I was just like, oh. And then I looked up and the guy finished cutting hair. And he said, who's next? And all the guys went, him, let him go, yeah? Let him go. Like, get him out of here. He is sobbing. And so I was like amazing. But she's had an incredible time. And she went on to San Francisco. And she told us that she got this chance and opportunity to meet these like street people. And this is incredible because my little daughter is there saying, Dad, you know, we were doing like their nails. They're sleeping on the streets. And we're trying to help them. And we're kind of looking after their nails. And then this lady who had been sleeping on the street for about 25 years said to Kezia, oh, you've done such a great job. Do you mind doing my feet? And Kezia said, Dad, honestly, when the shoes and the socks were coming off, but wow, how proud am I that she took a big gulp and she got right in there. And it's like, that's Jesus, isn't it? That is Jesus cleaning and helping and tidying. And so we're just so excited and that God's done so many great things. And I've got like a word kind of burning inside me. So excited to be here today. Tonight's going to be fun. We're going to like, you're going to be humor and comedy, and we're in those community centers. It's going to be brilliant, and if you can make it tonight, brilliant. But I've got a word within me, and it's from a really famous story that you've all heard of, and it's kind of when Jesus feeds the 5,000. And I want to just look at it from John chapter 6 and verse 5. The Bible says, John 6 verse 5, when Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he had already had in mind what he was going to do. And Philip answered him, 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? And Jesus said, make the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and the men sat down, about 5,000 of them. And Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Wow. Incredible, incredible miracle. And no doubt you've heard this story a few times in your Christian faith. But I want to look at something today a bit differently, because I want to talk to you today about the miracle that happens before the miracle. We can look at Jesus turning those loaves and fish into a feast. We could do that. But I want to talk to you today about the miracle that happens before the miracle. You see, something incredible happened before Jesus even saw the fish and the bread. That little boy, he had to get past some limiting thoughts. He had to get around some limiting thoughts, because if he'd not got around them, he would never ever have handed over his fish and his bread, and Jesus would never have done the miracle. You see, I hope you don't think I'm being rude, but I felt God told me to come and say this, is the first obstacle that you need to get over is yourself. I hope you don't think I'm rude that I'm a Scottish guy coming to say to you today, but my message today is get over yourself. The first obstacle, you see, I'm a Pentecostal guy. I was brought up in a Pentecostal church, and I belong to that tradition where, you know, we would come against Satan and the demonic forces. And I'm sure you've met those ladies who come and say, oh, I've got a cough. Satan is coming against me. And you're like, wow, is that what the devil is doing these days? And it's like, you know, it can be easy to get into this thing where, you know, we're fighting the demonic forces. But I want to speak to your soul today and say that the first obstacle that you need to get over is yourself. The first thing that you need to get past is yourself. You see, this little boy could have had 3 limiting thoughts that would have stopped him from handing over the fish and the bread. The first limiting thought that he could have had is, it's too small. It's too small. I'm so encouraged to be speaking to you today after we've heard Toby speaking. And he's basically saying the same thing as me, that, you know, hey, we shouldn't despise young and small things. And it's like, you know, we can sometimes be like, wow, it's too small. The little kid could have just been like, it's only a few fish and a few bits of bread. How is this going to make a difference? It's just too little. And, you know, we can look, and today, you know, you might think, well, I'm not massively gifted. I've not got masses to bring. I'm not a mega talented character. And we can say, oh, you know, I've not really got that much. I'm not as good as them. I'm not brilliant like them. Here's a little thing to write down if you've got a journal. Imitation leads to limitation. Imitation leads to limitation. If we are going to kind of like try and copy somebody else, we're always going to be limited by how good they are. God created you and designed you for incredible and wonderful things. He never called you to be some kind of like copy of another person. He wants you to be who you are. I've had to learn that a little bit the hard way. You know, I went to Bible college when I was 21, and I was there, and lots of people were there in Bible college, very intense, yeah? Walking around, people always looking like they were desperately needing a poo, and, you know, kind of wandering around, very intense. And I thought, oh, wow, you know, I need to change. And, you know, there would be guys that come out and go, oh, wow, I've just weed in the shape of Israel. And they'd be like, whoa. And it's like, I would be like, oh, man. I hope someone chats to me at the end about that. It's like, I couldn't listen to another word you said. But, you know, the deal is, guys, is that, you know, these students, great, God bless them. But I had to get to the place where God, He's made me. I like laughing. I enjoy having a few jokes. And I had to say, wait a minute. I got to be who I am, because imitation leads to limitation. And I've got to be what God's called me to be. And that's exactly what God's saying to you. And the little boy had to get past that sense of like, oh, maybe it's just too small. A second limiting thought that this kid could have had was, there's not enough to make a difference. There's not enough to make a difference. I'm speaking right now in this moment. Here we are in this hotel room. And we could look and we could say, wow, Warrington, with all that is going on, and with the troubles and the struggles of, you know, of a town north of England, we could like be saying, what have we really got in here that can make a difference? We could look at ourselves today and say, wow, we're having a go, but, you know, flipping heck, you know, the homelessness and the prostitution and the child abuse and, you know, the young people challenges. And we could sit back and say, listen, we could look at a few bits of fish and a few bits of bread, and we could see the thousands in the crowd and think, wow, yeah, we've not got enough to make a difference. But what this little boy had to realize is that it's not about him looking at what he's got. It's only about him being obedient, because guess what? It is God that does the miracle. It's God that does the miracle. You see, I love to be here today and hear these great stories about you being obedient to God. And my heart and soul's getting stirred up, because I'm thinking, as you guys are willing and open to give what you have, I believe that God is going to do an incredible miracle. That God will do a powerful thing in this area. People will talk and say, how can this community, how can this community make such a difference? And you will be like, wow, how is this community making such a difference in the rules of power and in the political world? How is this community making such a difference in education? How is this community making such a difference amongst the young people? And it will be like, wow, because they gave what they had over to God, and God did the miracle. It's like, wow. The little boy had to get over himself, get over that second limiting thought. Here's the third little limiting thought the kid might have had. Is a little kid might have just said, it's only a bit of fish and bread that my mum put together in the kitchen. It's only a bit of bread and fish that mum put together in the back kitchen. It's like, wow. I feel so stirred to speak to somebody today who maybe talks like this. I've not got a great education. I've not really come from a great background. Oh, Mark, I've not really come from, if you knew my housing estate or if you knew my street, I've not really come from the best beginnings. And as I'm speaking, I'm feeling that some of us, we say, well, I didn't really get brought up in the same way as some of these guys on stage are. But I want to speak to you and say that, that little boy, he had to get past where this fish and bread had come from. And he had to realize that when you give it over to God, God does a powerful miracle with mum's bit of fish and mum's bit of bread. And God can do a powerful miracle with everything that you hand over to him. You see, let me tell you about me. I went to Bible college. I became a minister. My mum and dad are pastors. And I was like, that was my deal. And then I became an evangelist, and I was going around events, but everybody was Christians. And I was talking to lots of venues where everyone was a Christian. And I was like, God, I don't want that. I want to be speaking to non-Christians. And so God basically, my wife and me, we went to see a guy called Dave Gorman. He's a comedian. He's not a Christian. He's a very funny man. And basically in that theater, I had a moment, a God moment. And basically, God spoke to me and says, I want you to have a go at this. I want you to do it. And I could have been like, oh, God, I'm a pastor's kid. I preach. I've been to Bible college. I'm not a comedian. But don't give limitations to God. Just hand it over to God and see what God will do. And God was like, oh, well, we can do this. And so I chatted to my wife, and we put this little thing on in a theater. 70 people came on the outskirts of Nottingham. Lots of non-Christians came. And I did this one-man show, this comedy thing. There were bits of it that were hilarious. People were laughing. There were bits of it. That tumbleweed moment when everyone synchronized buttock clench, and everyone's like, and it was like, oh! And but near the end, I put the gospel out there, and 5 people gave a first-time response to God. It's like, wow, that's so exciting. And then what happened is that I'd asked a minister to come and see it. I asked him to come and give me a bit of feedback. And he came at the end, and this minister came to me and he said, what are you doing? He goes, what has this been tonight? He goes, you need to go back to preaching in churches. This has been embarrassing tonight. He goes, do you want to be on TV? Is this what this is about? He goes, what are you on with? He goes, never do this again. And off he went. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're like, thanks for the feedback? Yeah, have you ever had that? You ever had one of them moments? Thank you for that. Yeah, and off he went. And so we're driving home, and my wife's chatting away, and she's excited about what's happened. And I said to my wife in the car, I'm never doing it again. My wife said, what are you talking about? So I told her what that minister said. I don't know if you've ever seen your wife or your brother or your sister so angry that the vein in their neck comes out of the car and wanders around. Have you ever seen that? Whoa. She said, listen to me. Listen to me. I looked up to God. God was like, listen to her. Yeah, I would definitely listen. God was like, I'm listening to her, so you should listen to her. She said, listen to me. She goes, Mark, it's true that you told some stories today that you should never tell again. There were some stories in there that you should never say again out loud. She says, but we'll change that. We can move that around. She goes, Mark, you were engaging today. People were enjoying it. And 5 responses to the gospel. She goes, we are doing it again. And so we started to do it in all these different theaters. And then I did it in this theater, and 800 people came to it. And on that night, 120 people gave a first-time response to God. But I didn't know this. But the guy that had been there on the first week, he was in there. He was at the back. And he comes down, and he comes up to me, and he says, that was amazing. He says, you need to keep on doing this. It is brilliant. And I'm just ready. I'm thinking, as soon as he stops talking, I'm going to let him have it. And God's like, no, be the bigger man, finger on lips. He says, well, thank you. And off he went. And now I talk about him all over the world, yeah? That's everywhere I go. Just tell me it's like great. But you know, the truth is that if I had allowed my background to limit me, what I'm used to, what I can do, but I wasn't to do that. I was to give the bit that I've got to God. I give it over to God and watch the miracle that God has done. And I'm so excited to tell you that I am at Edinburgh Festival this summer. As a young lad, I used to go up to the Edinburgh Festival and hear comedians shred the name of Jesus. And as a young lad, I sat there and thought, one day I'm going to be on that stage and I'm going to lift up the name of Jesus. I'm going to lift up his name. And I'm excited. So we're right in the middle, right near the Edinburgh Castle. Our venue is right in the center. And we're like believing for many to hear the great news. And so I love this story, guys, and I'm getting excited, but I wanted to tell you that, you know, let me just talk for 2 minutes about this, because most of us in this room, we're British, and British people, we have a bit of an issue, because we think, oh, hold back, you've got to hold back, you know, humble, yeah, do you know what I mean, never push yourself forward, yeah, all of that good stuff. And we think that, oh, you know, if you're maybe gifted, oh, I don't want to put myself forward, Jesus, you put me forward, yeah? And all of that stuff. And I want to speak to you right now and tell you the honest truth. That is not humility. That is selfish. If that little boy had held on to his bread and fish in his rucksack because he didn't think it was that much, the miracle would never have happened. You don't have this sense of like, oh, I'm just being humble. I'm not pushing myself forward. If you've got a gift, we need your gift. This church needs your gift. We need you to come and say, it might not be massive, it might not be the biggest thing ever, but here it is. And it's like, wow, thank you. And together we can make a huge difference. I love it. And then this incredible story of the Bible. I love that God is the God of the overflow. That the Bible says that everyone got fed and there were 12 basketfuls left over. This is a miracle. There were teenagers at that party, yeah? And there was still food left at the end. I mean, that is unbelievable. The thing is this, I love that God's not stingy. Have you ever been to one of those weddings or parties where they're making the food stretched, do you know what I'm saying? And near the end, it's like, oh, if you as a whole family could have one sausage roll and just try and make it all work. No, here's the Bible. God put a deal on and there was 12 basketfuls overflowing at the end. Isn't this phenomenal? God is a God of overflow. And we must reflect the God that we serve. And this is the deal. You can grip on tight to your blessings and live a life of scarcity, or you can give your blessings away and live a life of overflow. You can hold on tight to what you've got and hold on tight. Just make it through. We've just about got enough. Scarcity thinking. Or we can start to give our blessings away and live a life of overflow. How about this week you pay for someone's meal? We did it the other week there. My wife and me were in a restaurant, saw a couple, thought we're going to pay for their meal. And they're looking over. Who's that? Do you know who that is? I don't know who that is. And it's brilliant. And listen, it wasn't an evangelistic. I wasn't trying to do an evangelistic event. I wasn't going, Jesus died. He died for you, yeah? I wasn't doing any of that. Didn't do a mime, didn't do a drama, didn't do a rap. I just literally, all we were doing was we just want to live a life of overflow. I was in Starbucks a few months ago and somebody in front of me, I don't think he was a Christian, he just paid for my drink. And the rest of the day I was like, wow, that was a great blessing. Thank you, God. Living the life of overflow. It's not like, oh, we've got to just make sure it all works. We've got to keep it tight. And yeah, we've got to use our brains. But the truth is, God's looking for us to have an overflowing, generous spirit. And it's brilliant. But here we go as we're coming towards the end. And I want to speak to you passionately now. I want to ask you, have you ever been on the outside of an inside joke? You know when somebody's doing a little inside joke and you don't, well, what's that? And you kind of go, oh, well, what are you guys laughing at? And they all go, oh, never mind, never mind. Do you know what I'm saying? See, it's a horrible feeling. You feel like you're on the outside. You feel like, oh, man, they're into something and I don't know what it is. And, oh, man, you start questioning your value. And I'm speaking to churches all over the country because I believe that church has made the gospel a bit like an inside joke. We've made it like, oh, we all know what it is. We've got it. We've seen the light. We've got the revelation. We're all round the communion table having a great time. And the world are looking over and we're like, it's our little inside joke. Leaving people feeling on the outside. Recently I was in a church and I was sitting on the front row and the pastor said something. I've never done this before. I fell off my seat onto my knees and I started sobbing. He told this story about how a lady the week before in their church, she's 35 years, she's asked her husband to come to church. He's not a Christian. And he's always said no and passed it off. And then last Sunday, she comes down into the living room and he's sitting in a suit. So I'm coming to church. She's so excited. She's so excited. She's serving in the first service and he's going to come to the second. She goes in. She's telling everybody about this. She tells the pastor. She's so excited. And then she gets distracted. She's serving somewhere and she's looking for him in the second service. She can't see him. He's not there. What's happened? So she goes home after the meeting and she gets in for dinner and she's upset. She says, darling, you said you were going to come and it got my hopes up. And he said this. He says, I did come. He goes, I did come and I can tell you where I sat. And he told her exactly where it was. I was sitting there and a couple came over and says, oh, excuse me, that's our seats. We've sat there for the last whatever many years. Is it okay if you move? And he got up and he couldn't really find anywhere. And he felt a bit embarrassed and he went home. I fell off my seat. I started to sob. I says, God, what have we done? Church, this is not an inside joke. The gospel is not about us kind of having something and like we all know about it and let the world just go to hell. You know, I spoke with that pastor and he says, we're shuffling things around now. He goes, we're not going to have anybody sitting in the same seats any 2 weeks in a row. He says, because we're never going to have this happen again. Because he says the church needs to exist for the people that are not in it yet. That's what we exist for, is for the people that are not here yet. You see, I want to stir you up for a minute because I'm loving what I'm hearing. But I'm wanting to get in under your skin. I'm wanting to annoy you a little bit because, you know, it's like, oh, this is lovely. And we can be like, oh, those guys we're going into different parts of wanting. Listen to this. Is that my son came into the front room and I was wailing. And he says, Dad, what's up? What is going on? And I'll tell you what was going on. I was watching that fire. You know, the Grenfell Tower. You know that story. And I was watching a certain footage, and what had happened is that people that had got out of the tower, they'd been rescued and saved, were in a little circle, they were in a huddle, and you could see them talking to each other, and they'd got those foil blankets on, you know, the survival blankets, and they're in a huddle. And the film, the cameraman homes in on them, and they're all talking excitedly. They're obviously, they've been through a traumatic experience, and they're all talking. And in the background, you can see that the tower is still burning, and the firemen are trying to get people out, and this little huddle. And then suddenly, one of the men in the huddle gets up, and he pulls off the survival blanket, and he throws it down. And the next thing, the camera follows him as he starts to run towards the tower. And he runs towards the tower, and a few minutes later, you see this man helping a fireman, bringing an old lady out of the fire. And he has these words when he's asked about it by the media. He says, I have been rescued to see others rescued. And I want to be honest with you, friends, is that there's so many churches that are in a little huddle. They're in a little huddle, and they've got their survival blankets on, and they're like, oh, Jesus, would you come through the clouds? Would you come and rescue us and take us to heaven? This is an evil, wicked world, and we don't want anything to do with the world because we're a little crowd that have been saved from all that, and we're going to keep our little holy huddle. And I'll be honest with you, if that is church, I'm out. If that's what church is, I don't want anything to do with that. But what I'm speaking to you about today is that we would become those that would stand up, that would take off our survival blankets, and that we would go running towards the most devastated and the broken and the damaged and the ruined and the spoiled. That we would not think of our comfort in our little huddle, but that we would go to those that are absolutely devastated. That we would go to those that are absolutely broken. They're traumatized. They're on this very brink of finishing it all. And that we would run rescued to bring rescue to others. Oh, that you, friend, that we would never ever think that church is a hobby. That it's like we don't do golf, but we go to that place on a Sunday. That we would become those who carry the presence of God. That we take the smile of God. I don't know if one or two of the musicians can come and help me, but as I'm bringing this to land, I wanted to say that as I was praying about being in this room right now, I felt that there are some people who you are going to carry the smile and the grace of God. I felt that there might be, I don't want to offend anyone, but I felt there might be a lady in this room, and you're going to put your hand on the back of a young girl who's had an abortion, and you're maybe not going to have amazing words to say, because who knows what words to say, but you're just going to cry with her and let her see the grace and the goodness of God. There's somebody in the room that you're going to talk to someone that nobody else is bothering to talk with. That we're going to say, God, this is not about us staying in a huddle, but this is about us going to the broken and the devastated and the ruined and the damaged, the absolutely wrecked. That you would be those that would carry God to the places where no one has ever taken God before. We would have that sense that anointing is not for a little tingle on a Sunday morning, but we are anointed to preach good news to the poor. That we are anointed to proclaim freedom to the captives. We are anointed to see our heart is so generous, and out of the overflow of what God has given us, we are going to see many blessed. I wonder if we could bow our heads in the presence of God. Tremendous sense in this whole service of God being here. And in a moment, I feel like I've got a prayer that God has put in me for you as a church. But before we do that, as we just bowed in God's prayer, I wonder if there's anyone here and you've had those limiting thoughts. Maybe too small, I'm not enough, or maybe, oh, my background's, any of those thoughts. I've not got masses of time, so I'm simply going to count to 3. And if that is you today, then I'm just going to ask you to quietly stand, and I'm just going to pray, and then we're going to move the service on. We've not got a load of time, so if this is for you, then when I count to 3, I just want you to stand where you are. 1, 2, 3. That's amazing. That's brilliant. Holy God. Holy God. Holy God. Oh, Father. Holy God. God, I'm praying for these incredible and wonderful people that are standing, God. I'm just praying that, Holy God, that we would be able to get past and beyond our limiting thoughts. That we would get beyond and past those things that try to stop us from giving it all over to you, Jesus. And we want to give it over to you, Jesus, and watch you do the miracle. Lord, would you come, minister to us deeply, in Jesus' name. Church, is it okay to ask everyone to stand in the presence of God?